Hi, and welcome to the Relentless Marketing and PR Podcast. With me, as always, is Katie Atkinson.
And with me, as always, is Lauren Reed. We're two marketers and entrepreneurs, and we're here to share our philosophy on figuring it out, moving forward, and never giving in.
We're here today with Heather Middleton, Vice President of Public Relations for the Nashville CVC. In this role, she leads up PR efforts for Nashville's, is it $7 billion tourism industry?
$7 billion.
That's crazy. Can you share with us a little bit about what you do at the CVB?
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah.
So my team is responsible for all of the national and international tourism PR for the city. So basically anything outside of Davidson County falls under my team. And our office as a whole really is the sales and marketing arm for tourism for Davidson County.
That's great. So what we want to talk to you about today, and one of the main reasons you're here, is we always like to give our listeners a takeaway, a key takeaway that is actionable and something that they can actually use in their day-to-day work. So we've got PR professionals, marketers, and entrepreneurs, business professionals listening in today, and I want them to be able to understand Nashville is it's a booming town. There's so many opportunities, and everybody wants to talk about Nashville, but you only have so many hours in a day. You're one person, you have a team, but you can't do everything for everybody. So is there a process or a filter that you use to determine which opportunities are going to provide the best ROI for the city of Nashville? And then my hope is our listeners and our audience can apply that to their products and their services that they work on.
Yeah, we do try to do everything. We really do try to do everything that comes our way. I would say the obvious ROI in terms of audience is really important, but not just numbers. It's also, is there an audience that meets our brand promise, right? That talks about the Music City brand. For example, it might be that it's a narrowly focused music publication. So it might not have a big audience, but it fits the audience we're trying to reach. Right. So that's something for us that we evaluate as well. It's not just numbers, or as I always like to say, not everyone reads the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times.
Right, I love that.
So there are a lot of smaller publications. Right, of course they do, which I understand why. But you know what, sometimes a journalist at the New York Times might read a niche publication and find something new that you just never know who's reading what. And so to think of it beyond numbers and also about who is that audience reaching is really important as well.
And you've been at the CVC
a long
before
time.
It was a CVC, right?
A long time.
A while. And so I always, when I think about Nashville and who's made Nashville the It City and Music City, and now It City's over with and whatever it is now.
What are we now?
I feel like you helped get the brand to where it is. Can you tell us just a little bit about how that came about and all the work that you put in to make that happen?
Well, it must have been a cool journey.
It has been an amazing journey. At times, yes. We are so lucky to have incredible leadership in our organization. And about 15 years ago, our CEO said, we came out from underneath the chamber. We used to be a part of the chamber. Right. And when we came out from under the chamber, became our own entity with our own board of directors, our CEO said, it's time to put a stake in the ground and get this city to buy into a brand. And that brand was Music City. Some people may remember we used to be Music City USA, and we dropped the USA and just said, no, it's music of all genres. And it's not just USA, it's the world. We are the Music City. And so that was a big moment in time. And I think we've been able to just build on it since then. And it's been incredible to watch the growth and the change in people's perception. I think those of us who have lived here for a long time or grew up here know that there were a lot of stereotypes about Nashville back then that weren't accurate. I always used to say that if I had $1 for every journalist who used to get off the plane 15 years ago and say things to me like, oh, I brought my cowboy hat, or like, I didn't know Nashville had a skyline, or whatever it was, I'd be really rich and I wouldn't need a job because every journalist used to say it. Everyone said it. And I knew if I could get people here, if I could get journalists to come visit, it was the city and the people who live here and work here did the work. I didn't have to sell anything. Getting them here was the hard part back then.
Right. So you've talked a lot about the brand. Talk about the brand promise of Nashville.
Yeah. So our brand promise, the keywords that we look at in it are authenticity and friendliness and unpretentious. And those are the key things that we look at and want people to take away from their visit here. And those are the key things we go back to again and again, whether it's how we're marketing the city or what a visitor's experience is like in the city or how we pitch a story. It's, does this meet that brand promise? That was the brand promise that came out of the branding efforts 15 years ago, and we still use it.
It stays true today.
It stays true today, and it's in our, we have it posted in the office, and it really is something that we take very seriously, especially those key phrases.
Are there any opportunities that you've taken, that have come to you and that you've turned down? And you don't have to name the, but just because they maybe weren't a fit with the brand promise?
No, I don't.
Or did you have to change?
I think it's more about guiding the story than it is. We get a lot, and sometimes you can only do so much. Right. But it's just giving them things that they just, and it's not that they do it on people, that anyone does it on purpose. They don't know, right? So I feel like we're there to be a resource to go, well, sure, you could do that, but what about this? Did you know this about Nashville, or this about, Nashville's food scene, or about music in Nashville, or about, so it's really about guiding the story more than it is about turning it down. I mean, and again, I credit our CEO. He doesn't shy away from any hard questions. I mean, he's sat down with Vice when it comes to tough questions. And then from a story angle, we find a way to try to point out those authentic things that are part of our city.
So is it fair to say then that part of your process is really looking at your brand promise, pulling out those keywords and applying those as a filter to every opportunity before you determine if and how Nashville will proceed?
Yeah, and I mean, that is definitely something that we think about all the time. And it's, a good example from the music world would be, of course, Nashville's country music. Songwriters and country music lay the foundation for all this other great music that's happened. But you have to point that out a little more. People don't seek that out. They often want to go for kind of that easier story, the easier angle. But when it's pointed out, they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I had no idea that songwriters like Claude Kelly live here, who wrote for Britney Spears and Whitney Houston and Miley Cyrus and Rihanna. And, so when you can point those things out, they love it.
So right. I didn't know that either. So.
There's all kinds of interesting people.
The more you know. Yeah. So it's almost like securing the opportunity or filtering the opportunity is the first step, and then education.
Yes.
Is the second. And I've always said the evolution of a PR professional, and I look at my own career, 15 years ago, entry-level job in an agency. I just cared if I got the TV station there. Right. Like, I just needed to show up. Right. Just show up so I can tell my client I got you there. And then you learn quickly, oh no, the next step is the coverage needs to be really good. And you have to educate. You have to really look at the messaging. And I think that is, as we hire in entry level and grow them up, we watch the strategic ability to position and guide a story.
Yes.
And do so in a way that is mutually beneficial and helpful to a reporter.
The strategy not only makes it better for your client, but it's just a better story, really, right? When you can give them something that fits more of what they're looking for and more of what your client's wanting to say anyway. And I think, probably I spend almost as much time educating myself about what's happening in the city and who lives here and what they do and who are the interesting entrepreneurs and what new startup businesses. And, that's a big piece of the job as well. So it's not only educating the media, but it's also educating myself on what's happening in town.
So you, speaking of that, thinking through that, you work as, you're the PR team for Nashville, basically, but you have to work with so many different businesses, different stakeholders, different organizations. How do you do that?
It's not easy. It's not always easy. I'm sure I don't keep them all happy, but I do try. That is definitely a goal of ours, you know. If I can say at the end of the day that what I'm doing is good for the brand and the city and good for the media who's covering it, that's really the best I can do. Everything's not going to fit for everyone, and some things are going to fit more places than others. I do a lot of suggesting to the media, and then it's up to them to choose, right? So if they say, oh, what are the 10 best restaurants? Well, I don't know how to determine that. Right. But here are the ones that are getting a lot of attention, and you choose. There's a lot of that too that goes on.
You have to be very diplomatic in your role.
Sometimes, yeah, but also, we are diplomatic on the PR side, but we probably have a little more leeway than other departments in the CDC to say, because the media does know a lot of times something very specific that they're looking for. So we can, I'm not going to waste their time and give them something that doesn't help their story. So
in your current role, what has been one of the most challenging projects you've worked on over the past few years?
Oh my gosh.
and what did you learn and take away from it? How did you grow from it?
Challenging. Gosh, everything has its challenges.
Right?
There's no doubt about that. There are different kinds of challenges, right? Like the NFL draft was amazing. There were a lot of challenges to that from a PR perspective. Cherry trees would be one. Yeah. That was probably the biggest one that came out of it in terms of PR. But also things like, there were some key Nashville stories that, just sort of got glossed over. And it was like, okay, the NFL has more, their focus is different than ours.
Right.
So how can I still get attention for this? For example, a lot of people don't know, a lot of gaming music is scored and recorded here in Nashville. So the symphonic pieces.
Really?
Yes, like Madden.
Like dun 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 dun.
Yes, like this actual like movie scores. Yes, exactly like that.
Like when it goes into the NFL.
Yeah. So Madden, FIFA, Fortnite, all of those classical scores were done here in Nashville.
Oh, Fortnite's the bane of my existence.
Yeah, well.
I'm the meanest mommy ever.
Yes,
my 10-year-old that's not on it.
It's okay. You're not, it's okay. It's not a bad thing. So Madden was releasing their 2019 at the same time the draft was coming, and it had a draft theme in it, right? So it was going to be announced that was the theme at the draft. And it was all scored at Ocean Way. It was all done here. Yeah. And the head of EA Games Music lives part-time in LA and part-time in Nashville. And so he and I sort of came up with this plan to get some journalists in there to meet with the creative director and meet with the gentleman who wrote the score and talk about it and play some music for them. And so we just sort of did it.
Yeah.
We figured out a way to do it. It was just one of those, all right, well, the NFL is here to deal with players, and we've got to figure out the best way to get Nashville out there outside of just the TV coverage, obviously, that was huge from the draft. But what were some other ways we could?
And it ties back to your brand promise too, right?
Completely.
Music City.
Multi-genre.
That's really cool.
Right.
It's a multi-genre. It's very authentic. I mean, it's been done here for years. People just don't know the story.
I love everything you're saying because we talk a lot about the definition of PR and the foundations of PR and how there's all kinds of trendy and innovative and buzzy stunts out there, right? But at the end of the day, it comes back to the foundations of research, execution, implementation, measurement. And it seems like you guys keep research really top of mind.
We do.
Both for yourself, like researching your product is Nashville, but also digging into the reporters, their backgrounds, their past stories, so you know what to give them.
We do.
That makes sense.
We do, and it's time consuming. I mean, I understand why it's difficult because it is time consuming, but in the end, it's worthwhile. And
absolutely,
you do get a better story out of it.
A lot of our clients, we're not necessarily beating reporters down, to who are all coming to us to cover our clients. A lot of times we're having to be very proactive and create these angles. And we tell our team 90% of pitching isn't picking up the phone. It's the research you're doing to make sure you have the best story, the right messaging, the right reporter, all of that. So you said something earlier about, maybe this small niche publication might have a better following for this product versus New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, whatever. Let's talk about influencers. How has influencers changed the dynamic of your role? Because it has changed.
It's changed everything.
It's changed everything for us.
Changed everything.
I was laughing the other day as we're billing a client because I'm like, this is a service, this is a product offering that did not exist 10 years ago.
Right.
So it just influencer marketing.
It didn't exist 5 years ago.
Exactly.
It is.
And it's going to be different a year from now. Like everything is changing. I think you put it best when you say influencers. It's still the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
It is.
Like they're not adhering to a code of ethics or.
I think that's the biggest thing people run into.
Right. So just talk a little bit about influencers, but where I was going with this is, the micro influencers, because that seems very similar to the strategy we were discussing.
And I think as a city, we're in a little bit of a unique position when it comes to influencers because every celebrity that lives here is an influencer, truly an influencer. And then we have a lot of influencers who, like Happily Gray, who live here and do things organically. So we may not put as much emphasis on that as some other cities and tourism offices do. When Keith Urban tweets out something from a Preds game,
right,
you can't beat that, right? So that makes it a little bit different. But we get a lot of requests for free rooms and free meals, and it's like, well, you have 5,000 followers.
Right.
And I have this over here where they have 150,000 followers or whatever it is. So we do have to be judicious. We always try to help where we can, but we also have to be cognizant of what we're asking of our partners and of our members.
Right, because they're your stakeholders.
Because, exactly. If I send them someone who has 2,000 followers and gets no response or whatever it is, the next time I come around to ask for something, they're going to be like, really? Like the last one was, So we have to be thoughtful on both sides.
Yeah.
We certainly don't want to turn anyone away. We want to help where we can because, it is a grassroots effort. But we also have to be aware of our partners and what, their expectations are too.
And well, it goes to authenticity, I think, to your brand promise as well. If somebody, especially when it comes to influencers, if they don't have a point of view and it doesn't tie to your brand promise and they just want a free room, that's not very authentic.
No.
Is it? So
yes.
I think it seems like you're still thinking through that lens.
We are, we are definitely thinking through that lens. And also, like you said, it is a bit of the wild, wild west. So some of it is us going, I don't know, let's give it a try, or let's research that a little more, or let's see if there is anyone interested. Maybe there's a partner who might be interested and we aren't aware of why they might be interested in this particular niche. And sometimes that does happen, and a hotel will say, oh yeah, we would love to have that person because we're pushing this, this, or this.
Right.
So like I said, we always try to ask and we always try to help. It's rare when it's like a full-on, no, we can't do anything.
Right.
But it is a piece by piece. We do take it one at a time and look at it.
So I'm hearing a lot of, going back to our key takeaway for this episode, is ask good questions. Do your research, stay true to your brand.
Yes, without a doubt.
Anything else you would advise our listeners on? And keeping in mind, they don't all have the sexy product that we do in the city of Nashville, right?
Well, Nashville wasn't as sexy.
It wasn't.
No, I grew up here.
It wasn't.
When I moved here, I was like, it's close to home.
You know what? When I started 15 years ago, it wasn't what it is now. But I think, that's where the authenticity comes in, and that's what's so important. People won't believe it if it's not authentic, especially this day and age. People see right through it. And so I can't pretend like we're Music City if we don't have songwriters and, or that we have a great food scene. If all these restaurants weren't opening, I can't pretend, So it is that's where the research part comes in, and finding those stories that people may not know about, and saying, no, this really does happen here because look at this, or you can talk to this person, or, here's this product.
So this is just a sidebar question, a very PR-ish geek question, but thinking about that, and you're doing so much research, and you're going to all these restaurants, and our job is to tell a story, right? So how do you keep track of it all? What do you do? Do you have
if you figure that out, please tell me.
Stories. I'm like, how does this work?
Tell me if you figure that out. We have a lot of spreadsheets. We do, our research department helps us keep track of openings and closings of restaurants in town. So we can use stats like 132 new restaurants opened last year, and 20 closed, or whatever it might be.
So you have an entire research department.
We do.
That is helpful.
We have 2 people, I think, full time.
Wow, that's very helpful.
Yeah, and she's tracking things like hotel occupancy and tax collections, and I mean it's broad. But I went to her about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and I was like, we need to start tracking restaurants because people are asking.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
I know we probably reach out to you all when we do a lot of tourism work and hotel clients, and when we're pitching in feeder cities, like we need to know where our visitors are coming from. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure we turned to the CBC for that info. Like, what are your top?
And that's what they track. Cities? Yeah, those are things that she tracks. Where where our visitors coming from, what percentage is international. I mean, it's very broad, the work that her team does. So, yeah.
Thank you. I have a few questions as we wrap up, just fun ones.
Okay.
So tell us, you've worked in PR for a long time now. So this is 2-part.
Okay.
What's your favorite part about working in this industry? What drew you to it? And then we talk a lot on this podcast, and we're dorks. We're marketing dorks. We love that. We could talk all day long, but just PR and marketing, they're blending. They're kind of one big gray area now. How has that affected what you do?
So I think what drew me to PR, I was actually a film and television major.
Oh, really?
I studied film and television production, and decided after one internship that I was not cut out for production. I think I would have enjoyed producing, but the idea of like, that show ended, now you have to go to another job. Or I was like, I don't know if that's me. And I like to write. And so I don't even know who suggested to me PR. I don't know where that came from, but I did an internship. I thought it was a good blend. I did an internship at HBO, 2 actually, and then ended up working there. But I think what drew me was storytelling. It was being able to tell the story of at that time it was a TV show, right? Or and now it's tell stories of the people and the places people I interact with every day, and the place that I call home, which is amazing. And I think
it gave me chills. So weird.
It's great.
Yeah,
it is.
I know. I'm the emotional. She's like, no, that's not weird for you.
and that is probably what I love the most, is especially the people stories, being able to tell the stories of a visual artist like Herb Williams, who's doing such unique things with his Crayola. Right. The first press he got was because I brought someone to him and said, you've got to see what this guy's doing. It's amazing, and he was fairly new at it at the time. And so that to me is incredible when I can talk about people like that live here and do really amazing work and are just good people. There's so many great people in this town. I have found in the last few years, I work very closely with our advertising department. And because it's not just advertising anymore, right? It's also editorial content that goes along with it, where you have no control over it, but they're asking for your input, just like they would a pitch, and guiding that the advertising side of it, or it's fun because it's a big picture, right? Like one example would be a partnership we did years ago with Bon Appetit magazine, where it was a grub crawl. So they came to Nashville, and we had a morning grub crawl and an afternoon grub crawl in 2 different neighborhoods. And it was a consumer-facing event, so people purchased tickets. But it was the Bon Appetit editors ran they were there to talk to the readers. And that's how they found a lot of their editorial. And it was a great chance for us to be in the magazine as editorial, but also to have some really cool advertising. And, so it was broader than just editorial or just advertising. It was consumer facing as well, which I think is really fun to see that be a part of that bigger picture. Mm-hmm. So I've really enjoyed actually the convergence and where it starts to meet. Yeah, it's fun because it's still storytelling.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's still storytelling.
So, final question. We do segments.
I have one more geek question.
You have another geek question?
Sorry.
Okay.
One more geek question. What's your top outlet favorite that you are shooting for that you maybe haven't gotten yet?
Ooh.
Or your top favorite that you have gotten and you're just thrilled with?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. All for different reasons. Mm-hmm. This year, I'm really excited. They just announced today, actually, that CNN has moved their entire Central Time Zone New Year's Eve coverage to Nashville, which I've been working on that for a couple of years.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Years. I just want to say that so everybody hears years.
Hey, clients, things take time.
I've been talking to them about it for a couple of years. Yeah, just sort of putting that bug in their ear, And so we will have cut-ins like we've always had in the past several years. But this year we'll have Brooke Baldwin and Don Lemon here. And they'll be doing interviews, and we'll have a full hour of coverage, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, so it's things like that, but it's also, years ago, I worked with one of my favorite freelance writers out of Chicago on probably one of the first stories that focused on songwriters in this town and what that meant and how that looked. And she I sat her in a room with songwriters, I sat her in a room with publishers, and she talked to them. And I sat her in a room with, some folks from BMI to learn about that piece of what goes into it. And she really immersed herself for about 3 days. And it was a cover story for Southwest Spirit. So it really, I don't know that I have a favorite. There's so many.
Well, you have a lot of great hits.
It's fun.
And New York Times,
A lot of hits in Music City.
Good one. You could write copy for us.
I'd like to think I could come up with a little more clever than that. But we do a segment every episode, and the one today is called "The Juggle is Real."
Oh, it's real.
You're a working mama. Just any tips or empathy for our listeners who are trying to?
A lot of empathy. A lot of empathy. It is a slightly easier now that my kids are a little older. I think I had this misconception that, you can have it all. Yeah. You can be a working mom, you can do it all. You can have a spouse, and it's not that you can't do all of those things, but you can't do them all at the same time at the level you want to do them at. Mm-hmm. Something always gives, usually yourself, almost. Mm-hmm.
Every time.
100% of the time. So you can do all of it, but I wouldn't say you can have it all at the level that I had in my head when I was younger, that I thought I could have it all. Mm-hmm. And, self-compassion is a good thing because it's tough. And finding those other moms, whether it's in your office or just friendships, where you can sort of go, oh man, I've been there. I get it. I think is huge. It is for me, at least.
Yeah,
to have
absolutely
have those people that I can confide in and have them go, oh yeah, I get it. I hear you.
Well, I'm glad to hear it gets easier as they age.
It does a little. I'm ready for mine to drive. My oldest one's about to drive.
I have a 3-year-old.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's a tough time.
3, 10, and a puppy.
It's
so
a tough.
You have a puppy too.
Yes.
I know.
A
we should have planned it better.
Life.
Business owners probably, or partners shouldn't get puppies the same time.
Right, yeah. Oh, that's hard.
At least we haven't gotten pregnant at the same time. That'd be bad.
That's true.
That would be awful.
That's true.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Today.
I appreciate it.
This was awesome.
This is fun.
And our listeners can follow up on our podcast notes to get some of the key takeaways and some more of the stuff we've mentioned today.
Thank you.